Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you're having a wonderful day, and today we are here with a video on the fake Messi autograph saga that is currently going on and has sort of spread like wildfire beyond just the soccer space, which is sort of the more notable part of this. It seems like a lot of the hobby outlets are sort of picking this up as a potential case study that could further some fuel beyond just soccer and into other spaces where you might see this sort of stuff happen over time. I feel like it would be hard to think that this isn't happening elsewhere, and it definitely is something to look out for. So let's go ahead and talk about it. It is just as it sounds. This is not clickbait. People are losing their minds over potentially fake Messi autographs. So let's talk about it. It all basically stems, at least the recent sort of discussion about it, from this Reddit post where a guy by the name of Detroit Lions says, "How a Grail card pulled by my kid has become a total headache." A long read, but this may serve as a public service announcement to the community also seeking input/advice. He goes on to sort of give the spiel. You can go ahead and read it. I'll leave a link down below in the description to check this out in terms of the Reddit post. There's also a blowout forums that I'll link that I will reference later as well. Feel free to check out either of those. There's good discussion beneath it along with the inherent stories that were provided. So, luckily enough, there was a sort of mod of the Reddit that went ahead and surmised what this post had said prior, so that was nice of them. The card in question is depicted there on the left-hand side, an orange football's finest sticker auto from Lionel Messi, or at least supposedly from Lionel Messi. On the right-hand side, it is surmised, and the summary goes as follows. The original poster, I think that's what OP means, I just figured that out on the fly, so let's go. Bought 2 boxes of 2021-2022 Topps Finest Flashback Soccer. His kid pulled an orange Messi autograph out of 10. The poster then sent it to PSA for grading, but it came back as authentic instead of a numerical grade. PSA admitted it was a mistake and asked the poster to send it back for a PSA designation for the autograph, costing another $100. Weeks later, PSA called and said the autograph was fake, possibly signed by Messi's brother. The poster then asked PSA for written confirmation, but their email softened the language, only saying they couldn't authenticate it. The original poster then contacted Topps, who told him to send him the card, but refused to guarantee a resolution since it was over a year old. And PSA has 2 of these cards in its population reports, one of which is a red out of 5 gem mint, the other which is an orange out of 10 and graded gem mint. PSA has since said that they will be removing those 2 cards from their pop report and disabling their certifications, which I guess in hindsight is worthy of doing, but at the same time they're still going to be slabbed and likely bought and sold without much knowledge of what's going on. The mod then goes on to say it's a big deal because Messi's the largest name, or one of the largest names in soccer cards, so if PSA is calling his autos fake, this could be a massive issue for that segment of the hobby. Autographs also don't expire. Topps refusing to back their product after a year is ridiculous, at least, from the perspective of this mod, which I would agree with. And there are dozens of Messi autos from recent Topps and Panini products with nearly identical signatures. If Messi's team was involved in ghost signing, Topps and Panini need to take responsibility, not collectors and kids. And so that's the post. That's the Reddit. In terms of what else we know, we'll go ahead and get on into that. This has been a thing in soccer spaces for quite a while. It's been commonly known, at least, to some that are really into the weeds, that this type of stuff has been happening or possibly happening. Again, we have no confirmation. I don't think anyone was there to originally see these signs, so you never really know. You're just doing guesswork and sort of basing it off what you see. So let's go ahead and talk about what we see. As I mentioned before, there actually was talk of this prior. This is a blowout cards post from 2022 where a person went on to talk about how they've been collecting soccer cards for the last 2 to 3 years, and they're a huge autograph collector for the past 30, and they noticed when looking at Messi's old autographs, they looked very odd. So he did some research and had a good source tell him that it was known Lionel Messi's brother used to sign his stuff back in 2017, 2018, and that he's commented to a few people that the Eminence autographs were terrible in particular, and that he had messaged someone at Beckett on Twitter, and he responded saying the same thing, and you can easily see the difference in handwriting. So, again, let's go ahead and look at that, but all to say that this has been something that's been talked about for a few years now. This isn't necessarily new knowledge, but it is really sort of catching fire and spreading across the hobby. So A clear example here on the left-hand side, we have his Eminence 2018, and on the right-hand side, we have his Flawless 2015-16. And, you know, you don't have to be an autograph expert necessarily to look at these autographs and clearly tell that something is different. The sort of telltale that a lot of people use, and it's one aspect of it, but it is the L that you can see here, sort of the original base of the autograph, the first thing that goes down, and sort of the largest notable part of it. Here on the Eminence, you can see that it comes from the left-hand side, goes to the right, sort of swoops back, and then goes on a long line across the middle. While on the Flawless, you can see here, it starts on the right, has a slow and steady sort of climb down to the bottom left, and then quickly sort of comes back up to the right and off across the card. So, I mean, both of them obviously have the huge line across the middle of the card, but it's really the beginning third of the auto in terms of the L, where on the right-hand side, you can see clearly that it goes down and to the left, and on the left-hand side, it clearly goes down and to the right, and sort of has this what I almost call a coat hanger effect to it. I always sort of describe it as that. The coat hanger autos to me have always been suspect. When you go and look at the other parts of this auto, they're actually not terribly off. You know, the top half here, I'm not quite sure exactly what's going on or what it's trying to depict, but you can see on the left-hand side here, the top half of the Eminence auto, it goes from the bottom left quickly to the right, quickly back over, and then sort of comes back down in a little loop. You then have sort of a circle there, and then on the bottom of the auto, he has Leo spelled out. Now, Leo, in terms of this Eminence, looks pretty jagged, or not jagged, but not as fluid. As you can see, the L seemingly has two different lines. The E also is very clear, and the O is, I mean, it's an O. The O you're not going to glean a whole lot from because it's just a circle. So, meanwhile, on the other Flawless card here on the left, you can tell that the top half of the card here, it has a little bit of a swoop here at the beginning of the top. It starts right here, sort of swoops up, goes to the right, comes back to the left, and goes back down, generally looking nearly the same. The little swoop at the beginning, or the little fluid nature there, is a bit different, but in these examples, the top half of the card isn't a whole lot different. The bottom half is a little bit different here. You can see the L in Leo seemingly is sort of one line that goes down to the left and over to the right fairly quickly. You then have the E, which is definitely not as clear of an E as you have over here on the left-hand side of the Leo, and then you have the O, which again, you're not going to glean a whole lot from. But what I always say with these Flawless autos, and with what I perceive to be authentic Messi autos in general, is that they look extremely fluid, right? There's a lot of sort of curling lines. There's not a lot of really straight lines unless it is across the whole page or it's a long segment. If you get it in small spaces, it looks very natural. It doesn't look like someone's trying to fake an auto. So this is the sort of clear example, but we'll talk about others as there are many others to go ahead and discuss. Another example here, this is another early auto from 2010-2011. This is a facsimile auto, so it's not a real auto that he did on a card, but it's a real autograph that was then printed on the card. So this one's a little bit more in detail. You're not going to see this in most autos here. The top half is a bit extended, which again, you're not going to see elsewhere, but it does match up with what you saw on the Flawless for the most part. Again, the E is a bit more defined, but also, again, doesn't look as clean as the E on the Eminence in Leo. The L on this right-hand side is a little different. I will give it that. That one looks, you know, a little closer to the one on the left-hand side. Again, at least to me, the one on the left-hand side looks like two different lines, while this one looks like seemingly one stroke. But again, you can tell a huge difference in the original L. This one, again, starts high, goes down to the left, over to the right. Meanwhile, the L in the Eminence looks nothing alike. Now, I do want to point out that just necessarily, you know, having differences in autos doesn't mean that it's fake. There's a lot more to it than that, and that's what makes this whole situation a little tricky. Here on the left-hand side, you can see Leo signing some autographs. Here's some stickers along with a few cards from the Noir set that were in the Panini release for that year. Now, here on these L's, they generally look the same. I will say some of them are a bit lower, some of them are a bit different. They're not necessarily all the exact same, but again, in this situation, you can tell none of them look like the Eminence that we saw before. None of them start on the left-hand side, go down to the right, down to the left, and back over. None of them are that coat hanger fashion. They might not be as off to the left possibly as they could be, but generally they look pretty similar. Again, to point out that this is possible to have differences. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're fake, but there are a lot of similarities as well, and that's important to know. But none of those look like this. I mean, that's entirely different. This one, again, very coat hangery, very jagged. And if I really wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe sometimes he's just sort of lackadaisically signing. He's holding the pen in an entirely different way. He's just sort of being very lazy about it. And in those sort of scenarios, maybe that's the case. I do find it a little intriguing that the rest of his auto here is, fairly similar. I guess I say that it's not quite as similar. This top half is sort of massive in terms of the space between this left-hand dot and the right-hand edge. While if you look at these, I mean, it's all pretty close in terms of where they end. So if you wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, you could say he's just being very lackadaisical, not trying. And I guess, if you wanted to explain it away that way, I could see how you do it. But I would find it more plausible that these just aren't him at all. A further example here, which really sort of nails home that point. And again, I guess to be fair, here on the left-hand side of this Eminence, and again, just to state that, differences can happen, this top half of the auto is very far off from this left-hand side to the right-hand side of this. So that is possible. It doesn't always have to end together. But when you look at the rest of the auto, generally this looks pretty similar to what you'd expect to see on that flawless that we saw earlier, and just in general with his autographs. Now this is Eminence 2018. If we want to continue forward, this is also Eminence 2018. And this looks nothing like it in a myriad of ways. I mean, you can basically pick any single spot of this autograph and it looks nothing alike. The L clearly sort of has the coat hanger effect going on. If you look at the top half of the auto here, I think this is pretty telling. Again, you sort of have to follow my cursor and it's hard, but the top half of the auto starts at the bottom left, goes to the right, comes back to the left, and then instead of just going back down to the right, it sort of comes up and does a loop, which you don't see basically anywhere in Messi autos. This sort of second half of the top half auto looks like an E, which again, you really don't see that in the sort of O's that he's making elsewhere. And then the bottom, I mean, the Leo is absolutely putrid. Again, I say that Messi autos typically look fluid. There's nothing fluid about this L. I mean, it's basically an X. I mean, there's two clear lines that were made. The E, again, looks very distinct, which if you look here over at this E in Leo on the left-hand side, you can tell it's sort of a semicircle along with a little dash. I mean, generally that's what I see in the E in Leo, is he has a semicircle and then he puts a dash either above or in the middle of the semicircle, wherever it seems appropriate. Down here, it looks like he's clearly sort of having many different marks in the E. And then finally the O. Again, you can't glean a whole lot from the O, but I mean, look at these two autos. They're absolutely nothing alike. And, this is the type of difference where I can't just chalk that up to lazy autos and just doing things a bit different, because just the pen marks and the way that he would have to be holding the pen and the motions he's making are nowhere alike. That's not just simply a lack of effort or a lack of momentary focus. I mean, this is much deeper than that, pretty clearly. And so those are some examples. I don't have all the different sets and all the different examples where this takes place. I think that this is sort of a situation where, you teach a man to fish, or you teach a man to look at what they should look for in a Messi auto, and they can try to find which ones match up and which ones don't. I think it's a lot better for you to go ahead and do that rather than to have me map out every single set where there might be differences, because at the end of the day, no one's perfect, and I'm not going to necessarily know, but it seemingly started in 2017, 2018, and then has been hit or miss since then. And that's sort of the weird thing, is that he seemingly, goes back and forth between these two very different autos, and that's not typical really at all in terms of people signing cards, especially, really expensive cards that clearly people are willing to pay up for. I'm sort of surprised that it's taken this long for it to really hit, because this has been a problem for a long time. Where it also makes me a little nervy is with Beckett and PSA grading of in-person autos, because if it's taken them this long to really, nail in on these Panini cards, I sort of wonder how good they've been with in-person autos, because, this sort of example is easy. I mean, it's clear as day to be able to tell something's probably going on here. Now, you give these companies the benefit of the doubt, because on the back of these cards, we haven't really talked about it yet, the back all these cards say that they were authenticated or guaranteed by the companies that release them, in the sense that those companies are sort of backing it with their credibility, saying that, yeah, these are legitimate. And so you want to put some trust in that, but at the end of the day, the grading companies as well should do their part to say, well, are these authentic? And, in this scenario, it's very questionable. And clearly PSA sort of taking a stand on some of this and saying, no, they're not. And so I do wonder in terms of these in-person autographs, just how much you can trust them. Up here on the left-hand side, we have a couple Beckett ones, which, are kind of hard to tell what they look like through the card itself. It also has both Messi and Ronaldo. Now, to be fair, these Beckett ones, I'm pretty sure say witnessed on them. So, presumably someone from Beckett had seen both Messi and Ronaldo sign these, whether that be in person or through some sort of video. I'm not sure what exactly needs to happen to get that designation on there, but they do say witnessed, and I do think that might be where we have to go eventually. But on the right-hand side here, you have a PSA authentic rookie Messi auto that, just has a Messi auto, and I do think that this generally looks like what you'd expect to see Messi autos look like. I'm not saying that this is the coat hanger auto that you'd be nervous of, but what I do think is problematic is if Messi's brother has been doing terrible signatures and it's been getting by Panini and PSA and every other grading company for a long time, I wonder, and I kind of think at times, that it would be pretty easy for someone out there with bad intentions to just fake Messi autos and get them by the grading companies. Why do I think that? Well, Messi's auto in particular is one where he picks up the pen after basically everything he does. He does this L, picks up the pen, does the top half of the first half of the card, picks up the pen, does another top half part, picks up the pen, does the E, picks up the pen, does the E, picks up the pen, does the O, picks up the pen. He picks up the pen so many times that all you have to do is understand how to do each individual segment of that and then just recreate it. And, there's going to be so many inconsistencies that it doesn't even need to look perfect because none of them ever are going to be exactly the same. And so as long as you can just recreate it to a decent degree, it's, seemingly hard to tell is the way I would put it. And so it makes me wonder, just beyond this Messi situation, obviously you sort of have to extrapolate this out and wonder where this leads. And, especially for modern autos, man, it leaves me in a very nervy spot because for guys like this, I mean, honestly, Erling Haaland's auto is almost so bad that, it'd be a little difficult to fake it. But, for like a Lamine Yamal, where literally he just has a few different lines going different ways with, the pen clearly picked up at 3 different spots. You have a Zidane auto that's basically just an oval with a line. I mean, you're totally trusting these guys to do what they say they're going to do with seemingly no proof needed. You just send them a batch of stickers and let whoever sign them, and as long as they look somewhat the same, you just accept it at face value. And I think that is just something that, seemingly we can't do anymore. If Lionel Messi's going to be faking this, who's not going to be faking it? I mean, clearly these guys are signing tons at this point. I think that's part of the problem too, is nowadays people are signing much more than ever, and these players also are getting paid more than ever. So, their interest to have them faked would seemingly be at an all-time high. You're not getting tons of money for doing this. I'm sure they get paid decently, but I mean, they're making tons of money as a footballer. Do they really care to sit down and, spend hours upon hours signing sheets? It's pretty boring. It's pretty brutal. I doubt they want to. Hopefully they have the integrity to do so. But I do wonder, and, can you even tell if they're authentic? Again, with the Zidane, I think that's a huge example. I mean, it's literally an oval with a line. I mean, how are you going to tell if it's him or not, as long as someone knows how to make an oval and a line? And so it's a really tricky spot. And I think the way we've gone with autographs, where the players are doing less and less to actually put an autograph to paper, makes it even harder. For example, here's a Puskás auto from back in the day, and, clearly, this takes effort and has so many different ways that you could check it, right? I mean, this seemingly is just one pen stroke. He's going across the entire thing in one pen stroke, so you're going to have to get down every single minute detail in terms of how it changes path to a T for his entirety of his name to be able to fake a Puskás autograph, which is incredibly difficult. You might be able to. It would take a ton of effort, a ton of time, and is it really worth it when Puskás autos aren't, incredibly valuable? Now, on the right cards they are, in certain situations they are, but generally if you just have an auto, it's not worth a ton, and it's not something you could sell in high volume without sort of, raising some red flags. Meanwhile, Messi autographs, or even Lamine Yamal or Zidane, when you only have to do 2 or 3 things and you can pick up the pen whenever you want, it's extremely easy to replicate, and it's extremely to do in more mass than something like this. So there's just so many different factors, I think, that have sort of made this ripe to exist, and I think Messi is just drawing our attention there for the time being. And so ultimately, where does this leave us? I don't really know. Is this the end of the autograph era? I doubt it. I mean, autographs are inherently pretty cool, and I think they do have a space and historically have been pretty prevalent in sports collecting in general, so I do think that there's always going to be some sort of allure there. But is it going to raise a lot of questions? Is it going to make people a little more skeptical of this type of stuff? Are people just going to be less inclined towards autos in general? I think that that is certainly a possibility, and the more stuff like this happens, the more that likelihood goes up. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video on the Messi fake auto situation. Hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you got something from it. Would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking, let others know as well. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, as always. If you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. But with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day, and peace.